Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is the RR Show narrating for you the best Reddit stories. Oh dear. The best Reddit stories the internet has to offer. Today, we're jumping into r/unsolved mysteries. So get ready for this story from cinnamonandcrime. In 2017, the skeletal remains of A were located in a disused barn in Micheldever, Hampshire, UK in 2019. Witnesses came forward stating that he was a male, he was a French traveller whom they'd met in 2012. It's believed he died shortly after this meeting. Despite various tests, including fingerprints and DNA testing, he is yet to be identified. The body in the barn. On the 1st of December 2017, units from Hampshire Constabulary were searching the area as part of an unrelated investigation when officers came across an old and disused barn. Officers entered and searched the barn when they located the skeletal remains of an unknown male. The barn itself was a disused cattle shed which formed part of the abandoned Burrow Down farm. The site was heavily overgrown and had not been in use for 50 or so years. Due to the remote location of the barn, it's unlikely any person would be passing by other than maybe the occasional dog walker. You can find a photo of the barn in its proximity to Micheldever, a small village 6 miles north of Winchester. As you can see, it's a fairly rural location, adjacent to the train line which runs south to Winchester and north to Basingstoke. This is a bird's eye view of the area itself. The area itself is severely overgrown and there are several buildings that can be seen in this overgrown area, and it's not clear which building is the barn in question. There's no photo available of the front of the barn itself. Now, clothing found on the remains, or with the remains, were a pair of Wellington boots, size 10, a blue zip-up fleece jacket, a blue jumper, and jogging trousers. Although not stated, the reconstruction shows the male also wearing a grey beanie hat. The blue jumper found on the remains contained a label with the word "casual sportif" and the image of a fleur-de-lis. I've been unable to find whether casual sportif is a brand or simply a line of clothing meaning sporty casual. The French words and image of the fleur-de-lis, however, implies the clothing is of French origin. Several further items were found alongside the skeletal remains, including a sleeping bag, a black Caramore rucksack, an umbrella, an A to Z map of Great Britain. Written on the front of the book is Waterloo-Winchester £27.20/2. The novel The Close by Marina Cole, released in 2006, reading glasses, a white t-shirt, 4 or 5 white flannels, 2 packets of polos, a pack of Germaline and antiseptic cream, a garden trowel, a pair of yellow gardening or outdoor gloves, and a pair of black cotton gloves. Also a flask, a torch, a Sony Walkman-style radio, tobacco and Rizla papers, various food wrappers, a pack of Zantac to relieve heartburn and indigestion. Interestingly, in 2020, the FDA removed Zantac globally due to its link to cancer being seen in animals. No form of identification was found with the remains. While not all items have had photos released to the public, all available photos of these items can be found. Investigation and identity. A post-mortem examination was conducted on the remains which showed no signs of assault or restraint. Although no cause of death could be identified, due to the lack of apparent suspicious circumstances, the coroner was ruled that it was likely a male that died of natural causes. The coroner stated he would have died at least a year prior to discovery. The male was determined to be middle-aged, although possibly older, 5'6" to 5'7" in height, medium build with short brown hair and a narrow face. He was also believed to possibly have an overbite. It was also stated the male had good dental care in his younger life, however poorer dental care in his later life. There's no further information regarding this statement. Various lines of inquiries were conducted in an attempt to identify the male, including reviewing all known missing persons, dental examinations, fingerprint analysis, and DNA testing, both within the UK and European databases. Sadly, all inquiries were fruitless and the male remains unidentified. After 2 years, the anthropology department at the University of Dundee created a facial reconstruction of the skull. This image, along with some of the photos of the belongings, were released to the public in 2019. Appeals and witnesses. The French traveller, following the public appeal in 2019, 3 witnesses came forward, who said they interacted with the male in the late summer of 2012. Now, this information regarding the witnesses were not released to the public until 2022. The witnesses, who lived in the small village of Itchenstoke from the barn, stated the male had asked to camp overnight in their garden. The witnesses described the male as white-skinned, clean-shaven with brown hair, and aged in his late 30s to 40s. They explained he was French and appeared to have a military background and may have been suffering from mental health issues at the time. The male stated he was hard of hearing in one ear due to his time in the military, that his parents were deceased, and that he was possibly heading to Ireland or Canada. Prior to him leaving, the witnesses gave the male some items including camping equipment, food, and a £20 note, some of which were later found with the remains. The walk from Itchenstoke to the barn would have taken approximately 2.5 hours. Prior to the release of the witness information in 2022, I had found a woman, who I now believe to be one of the witnesses, on Facebook Appeal. However, I will not be including her identity, but going forward I will refer to her as Mary. Her comments can be found, and a transcript is here. 2019, we had just provided some information to the police that we sincerely hope will help in the process of identifying this poor man. 2021, in response to another user asking if there was any update. Thank you for caring. No, very sadly, he hasn't been, even after we provided the police with information. He was given the items pictured by my husband when he appeared wandering, by choice according to him, without barely anything. He was a Frenchman, we think. He may have been terminally ill and chose to die alone. He was a very interesting and polite man. I still very much hope it concludes with identifying him and eventually telling his story. The images included in this appeal were the map book and rucksack, and the yellow gloves. It's not clear if Mary is suggesting all of these items were given to the male, or merely one or some of them. The comment does, however, tie up with the witness information released by the police, and so for this reason, I believe Mary was one of the witnesses that the male camped with. I did some digging, and Mary and her address, which for obvious reasons I won't include here, and researched other persons living in that area. Due to how rural the area is, I wondered if the unidentified male may have come from or went to other persons in the area. During my search, I located a woman who I now believe to also be one of the 3 witnesses mentioned by the police. This woman, who I will call Linda, was or is a writer for Country Life magazine and happened to write an article about a French male who camped at her property. I have excluded her name in the article, however the article can easily be found with a bit of digging. In this article, Linda states a male came to her property with a small rucksack. She states he was a Frenchman and asked for somewhere to pitch his tent whilst he was on a walking holiday, which she agreed to. She describes him as having little belongings, a small tent, a plastic bag with a razor, some tobacco, and a sleeping bag. He did not appear to have any food or camping equipment. The male told her he was an only child with an elderly mother and that his father had shot himself in front of him when he was a boy. He said he was deaf in one ear from an explosion he witnessed whilst in the French Foreign Legion. The male stated he had come from Dover, around 126 miles away. Dover is the main port from Calais, from France to the United Kingdom. Although the article stated the male walked, this is physically impossible to do in a day, so I can only assume he was hitchhiking or he jumped on the back of one of the lorries entering from the port. The male told Linda he was heading to Salisbury, about 29 miles away, and ultimately on to Canada. He stated he was a musician who played at jazz festivals and was following a girl to Canada. Linda appears to have taken the male to her neighbors to spend the night, who, in the morning, cooked him breakfast, gave him £20, a map, and drove him into town. Given the information provided by Linda and Mary, I believe that the two of them, plus Mary's husband, are the three witnesses mentioned by the police. It appears the male has first approached Linda before staying the night with Mary and her husband. Mary and her husband have fed the male, given him items that were later found with the remains, and taken him on his way. At some point after this, the male had died, and 5 years later, his remains were discovered. So who was the French traveller? Where was he going? And how did he die? From all the information gained from the police and from witnesses, this is what we do know, assuming what the male said to the witnesses was the truth. French, white male, aged in his late 30s to early 40s. He was clean-shaven with short brown hair and was 5'6" to 5'7" in height. He was traveling in 2012 and likely died the same time. He spent time in the military, most likely the French Foreign Legion. Possibly had an elderly mother, with his father committing suicide. No siblings. Musician, known to play jazz festivals. Hard of hearing or deaf in one ear. Heading to Salisbury, Ireland, or Canada to find a girl. Some questions I still have around this male. When exactly did he die? He was found not far from where he interacted with the witnesses, so I can only assume he died the same day, if not shortly after. As someone who had travelled over 100 miles already, with the intention of travelling hundreds more, for him to be found only 8 miles away from his last known sighting indicates to me he died shortly after being with the witnesses. If he did die at this time, what did he die of? There were no marks on the body to indicate anything other than a natural death. Late summer in the UK means that hypothermia isn't an issue for rough sleepers, and none of the witnesses appear to have reported him in any pain. What would cause someone to die 8 miles later, apparently being final night and evening? Did the male suddenly start feeling unwell after leaving the witnesses and found some shelter to lay down, dying shortly after this? If so, what could have come on so suddenly and prove so fatal so quickly? Or did the male spend weeks or months here, ultimately dying of starvation or exposure? If so, why did he travel so far, lie to the witnesses about his ongoing travel, and then only travel a further 8 miles, where he stayed until his death? Regardless of the circumstances of his death, we still don't have a name for this man. I've tried searching French websites but have been unable to find any sort of missing persons. I'm unsure if the information is publicly available. Whilst there are conflicting statements around whether both his parents were deceased or whether his mother was still alive, someone out there must be missing him. There is so much information available to us about this male that we don't usually get with unidentified remains, and it frustrates me that we can't put a name to him. I'd love to hear everyone else's thoughts on this male, and particularly any French residents that may be able to assist with searching French websites or missing reports. Alright guys, I hope you found that one interesting. Oh, it went out by itself. Until next time, make sure you go and check out this creepy video right here. If you enjoy scary stuff, this one will be right up your alley. So go check this one out now, and I will see you over there.